You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. With the only Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Thanks again for making us your first listen, and we got plenty to get into as we are rolling on into 2025, kicking the door down. Thanks for riding along with us throughout the last year, and hope it was a happy New Year's Eve for everyone out there, New Year's Day. And looking forward to a whole lot coming up over the next 12 months, Chris, that will, take us, I'm sure, on a roller coaster ride once again. And we'll get into a variety of subjects that will impact that roller coaster on today's episode. I do want to spend some time with you with a football question as it relates to some things still to be finalized now that we're on the other side of a bowl game and things like that. When it comes to the coaching staff, with obviously 2 new coordinator hires being made, there's some shuffling. Maybe there's some things happening as far as those on the outside being brought in. Still seems like all possibilities are on the table. So I want to ask you about that coming up in just a moment. But want to get started today on the hardwood as we saw a Big 12 conference opener come and go for the Red Raiders and go the wrong way, unfortunately, as Tech falls to Central Florida at United Supermarkets Arena on New Year's Eve. And a lot of credit to Central Florida just to kick off that convo, Chris, because I thought what they were able to do defensively against some of your better players, which we'll get into in just a moment, and then also clearly what they were able to do offensively, man. Making shots, always a good idea. And it was more than just one guy. So I hate to do it, begrudgingly, frustratingly, I guess I just start with a big old hat tip to the Knights for making some things happen and getting out there with a win on the road.
Yeah, I guess how you got to that point was the surprising part. I'm not surprised by the result. At the end of the day, I was shocked. We even talked about this at the beginning of the broadcast before the game even started, that I think Vegas had you like as a 12 and a half point favorite. And I was like, okay, I didn't – this is a bad matchup for you. And it was last year. And I think it because you beat these guys at home last year, but it was a game on a Saturday that while you led most of the game, you never were in control of it. And you certainly were never in a position to be in control of this one on New Year's Eve. And they just, it's a veteran point guards scare me, especially when they're really good like Darius Johnson is. I mean, he's kind of quiet, made a few plays here and there, and then the last 7 or 8 minutes of the game, he just kind of, he took over. And that's what happened to you against Texas A&M as well. Same thing. Their veteran point guard in Fort Worth just kind of takes over. You put the ball in his hands, and it's like, okay, I'm going to make the right play. I'm going to get to the free throw line. All those things. But I think to your point, Cowan, what you stated is that this felt like in some ways one of your football games, whereas you had some offense and you feel good about your offense, but just can't get the other team stopped. And I thought that UCF, they kind of St. Joe'd you is what they did. They basically took away the 3-point line. They're like, you can throw it into the post all you want and work the clock and we'll trade 3s for 2s and we'll get to the free throw line and put you guys in a bind and all these things. But they just they took away the 3-point line, for most of that game and just decided Chance McMillian's not getting get his today. Darrion Williams going to have a hard time today. And okay, who else you got? And you throw it to JT Toppin a bunch and he has a nice stat line. But it just, this is a UCF team that, while not expected to do much, I like their parts, and we'll see kind of where they go from here. But boy, it's nice to have 7'2" back there protecting the rim, because you can get really aggressive on the 3-point line because you got an eraser back there that'll fix. You make a mistake, he'll fix it back there. So anyway. Long way to go, but not the ideal way to start for sure.
No, definitely not. You spend some time in the first half just with a nightmare courtesy of Mr. Hall, and as the game goes on in the second half, you're thinking, all right, well, maybe we're figuring out a way to slow him down a bit, and then here comes Johnson just down the stretch. So you got to give a lot of credit to Central Florida. And what they were able to do defensively, Chris, I think has to be credited as well. I kind of wonder what you saw from your seat as far as neutralizing impact players for Tech, namely the ones you already mentioned in McMillian and Darrion Williams. We saw, later on in the game, some plays begin to be made by either one of those guys, but it was kind of like for the game at large, it was too late, too little, too late. You allowed it to go on too long where they had an extended lead, or obviously we're in double digits at various points. But did anything stand out to you as far as maybe what you saw the Knights committing to defensively to kind of prioritize those guys? Were they just some off days for those two, or how'd you see it?
Yeah, and this is what makes me nervous about this team. And I mentioned the St. Joe's reference is what St. Joe's did to you up in Brooklyn on that first game that you played against those guys before you came back the next night and beat Syracuse. This is, I think you got bullied a bit, and they were very physical with you. That's UCF style. That's why it's a bad matchup for you. You're more of a finesse, more of a get up and down, more highly skilled, and I just think UCF wants to get up and down, and they want to push and shove a little bit, and that's what they did. That and I think you could tell, and Grant pointed at this multiple times. I mean, Grant pointed the finger at himself repeatedly. To me, after the game for our broadcast interview, and then in his press conference afterwards, but he kept talking about sense of urgency and grit and all those terms that he uses, and you could just tell that UCF really had it and Texas Tech didn't.
Yeah.
And I said this on the radio broadcast. It's like it's gonna. There's a lot of new pieces on your team that haven't ever played in this conference. Okay, yet and they have now, but up until the game versus UCF, they had not. You can tell them how it's going to be. You can show them. You can meet about it. You can watch the film. You can, again, meet about it again and all that. But until you kind of get through it, and you just wonder, was there anybody just showing up going, man, we've won all these non-conference games in here. We've just hammered teams. This building will win this game for us. I mean, I don't know that, but you just wonder if they didn't you didn't come in with an edge. I mean, UCF clearly did.
Yeah, it looked that way. Like what you're describing, the body language, and I kind of felt like the Knights were flying around early on when maybe you weren't.
From the get-go.
Yeah.
I mean, from the absolute jump. I totally agree with you. And you look at – you felt really good about your team because I think you felt really good about the nucleus of Chance McMillian, Darrion Williams, and Kerwin Walton. Kerwin Walton has been in a slump now for about a month. I mean, he did nothing in this game. But he hasn't done anything really in December. And I hope that 2025 he hits the reset button because he's exploited on defense. He's not a great rebounder. He's just got to do some of those things other than just being able to shoot it and being a threat to shoot it and all those things that help you. And I wonder if at some point you look at switching up your starting lineup. Because he's been starting. I don't know. I mean, but he's just so
far off the radar, man, that when I'm thinking about category of impact guys being neutralized, I didn't even consider him necessarily because and
that's a problem.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big problem.
He's a starter, and he's just a non-factor right now, and he's a better player than that.
It's like the Kerwin of 2 years ago when you felt like last year, wow, McCaslin really got something out of him that the previous guys had not. And so I hate to see that regression. There's still a lot of time left, but they got to have it if they're going to be the team they want to be, right?
Yeah, and you're at the beginning of your lengthy race here. We got 19 more of these to go, and 20 when you count the conference tournament. So it's because I know Grant said it after the game. He's like, man, I've been on teams that started out 5-1 like we were last year, and then we finished, basically like 500 in the league, and or no, I guess you were better than that last year. I'm saying he said yesterday or the day before, I've been on teams that started out 5-1 and then they finished 500 is what I meant to say, and then you've been on teams that start out like 2-4 and then end up being 500 as well. So it's just there's some ebb and flow here to this thing, but you got some things you need to address, and you're about to head on the road for back-to-back games. But it's just a problem when somebody comes into your building and they basically shoot for the better part of the game. They shot 60% from the field. They made more free throws than you attempted. I mean, these are they made 7 more threes than you did. All the things that you pride yourself on, shooting the ball well. We know how skilled your offensive players are, and you were averaging about 10 threes a game. But they had 10, you had 3. And this is what you were averaging per game coming into this one, is 10 makes from behind the arc, and you just didn't even sniff that. But they didn't give it to you. So that's what the recipe is going to be here, is put these guys on their heels. They will, when you get them in one-on-one situations, when they get a guard, they may guard for a second, but they'll panic and foul you. And that's what, Grant talked a lot about after the game, to me and to the media, is that we've got to get better there. And again, he pointed the finger at himself. And so we'll learn a lot about these guys here in the coming, because, think about it. It's like an NBA trip, going to play back-to-back up in the state of Utah. Then you're going to come home with arguably the best team in the Big 12 at Iowa State staring at you at home. Then you go to Kansas State on the road. Then Arizona comes here. It's just you can't look up. It's just all of them are going to be monsters. But it's got to come from Darrion and Chance, honestly.
Yes.
That's where, and I think Kerwin, I'm going to include him in that. I just think your nucleus that returns, that's got to come from those older guys that have been in with this coach, and things were expected, and those 3 guys all start, and that's just where this thing's going to have to get turned around pretty quick.
The most disappointing, or maybe just the most concerning kind of red flag popping up to me is today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle all the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. And right now, new customers can bet only $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL and a whole lot more, all in one place. So when you get a hunch, a gut instinct in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more, all on the same page where you place your bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a gut feeling again, and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. The most disappointing, or maybe just the most concerning kind of red flag popping up to me, is what Tech's been unable to do defensively to this point in the season, when I know they really want to base a culture around their defense. And sometimes you defend well, guy makes a tough shot, and you credit that guy. And there was probably some of that, I guess, that was playing out in this game. But just at, I guess, a big picture kind of point of view, so far this season, the defense has been not reaching the standard I know that they want to hit. And I don't know what that's rooted in, but Chris, I do kind of feel like that grit that you already alluded to is one of those necessary ingredients, which, includes some great effort and some want to and things like that to play defense. And maybe that's just lacking right now for whatever reason.
And Grant said it, I think, well, in that none of these players have a reputation for being elite defenders on his team. And it's not the team necessarily that they thought they'd have, because you thought Devin Cambridge would allow you to do some things when he was in the mix with your rotations and your depth and playing different lineups. Okay, so let's remove that. But there's not anybody that's elite on the ball. I think Grant had talked to me before one of the mini TV games that I did about, we're still kind of searching for, just because, and I remember saying this to you multiple weeks ago, you're going to miss Joe Toussaint's toughness, because what Joe and Pop gave you, I think there was some grit and toughness. And I think there was emotion shown. Who on this team, this collection, this version of Texas Tech, who's willing to get pissed at one of their teammates? Who's willing to say, hey, no, be better there, or this isn't acceptable, or whatever it may be? Who is this guy? Because you've got a bunch of nice guys, bunch of well-behaved. Joe was a bit different. He'd get on the floor and he'd wrestle you. And if you wanted to fight, okay, we can do that too. And there was no doubt that that Bronx in him was something that everybody kind of fed off of a little bit. Well, do you have anybody that has that now?
Doesn't jump out to me. An obvious answer doesn't jump out to me. Before we move on, Chris, got to talk about JT Toppin being back on the floor. Yeah. Double-double for him, 26 and 10. There are some things that are just automatic, it seems like, about his offensive game. So I hope we'll continue to see a lot of that near the rim as the year goes on. Was cringing at a few of the missed free throws down the stretch, which obviously loomed large. So it wasn't a perfect day for him, but quite the return, I'd say. 26, and for the most part making the most of his offensive opportunities. But to be a complete player, it probably goes back to some of those things maybe we're not quite seeing defensively, although he made a couple of nice defensive plays. But it's great to see him back on the floor, and obviously you can't deny the impact that guy's going to make for the Red Raiders.
No, and I think there's something to be said about that too, about, okay, now you've got all your guys back and you're going to have to get used to each other again and the rotation and the way we want to play and these guys with these guys in game situations, mind you. But yeah, you put him on the low block, man. He's pretty scary. And I thought at some point UCF was content with that. Like, hey, we're not going to double.
Yeah,
we've got this big lead. If you just want to operate with these post isolation plays and let him score, you're not going to ultimately beat us doing that. And it got close. Now, granted, that was a I think 11-0 run that really helped get you back to that point, and then you went back to it and although, but yeah, he's a really good player, and I'm excited to see kind of what it looks like in a competitive game, and so you're not trailing, and he's just. But yeah, being 4 of 8 from the stripe is a bit of a struggle, yeah, because as we knew, you needed every bit of those.
Well, and he's going to have some of those opportunities, man, yep. Like because he's such a. He can finish so well, even against physicality. He's going to have so many and-one opportunities, I know of it. And he wasn't a great free throw shooter at New Mexico, so I'm not trying to suggest there's something new to this, but would love to see that come along a little bit. But just glad to see him back on the floor.
Yeah, and it's funny because he is the epitome of what I was describing a while ago. He's very even keel. Make or miss on the free throw line or whatever, and he may clap and go, dang it. But he's just, and in some ways this is good.
Sure.
I'm just saying, like in general, like who's going to go throw the Gatorade cooler over there?
He's also the new guy. I mean, are we expecting the new guy to be the rallying point?
No, you're not. But he was. Oh. Yeah, I was glad to see him play as well and as sharp as he was with having missed essentially a month, even though it was just 4 games. There were so many gaps in between it. You felt like it was. Had been a long time since he'd suited up because it was early December, and now here we are in January. So, but yeah, he's about to get his fill now. But yeah, I was glad to have him back. Federico, obviously back from that shoulder issue that he had versus Lamar prior to the Christmas break. So now
gave you some decent minutes too. I didn't mind what we saw from Federico, but obviously you need a lot more from everybody, man, as you fall in the opener on your home floor. You hate to waste the home opportunities against anybody, but much less Central Florida when you're a double-digit favorite for whatever reason that was. But you come up short. Now you hit the road. Big challenges ahead, but what also comes with that, big opportunities. So maybe if you can break on through, get a win, start feeling a little bit better, and put some things together as we just begin this marathon of a Big 12 fight now with a few games added to the slate. All right, before we get out of here, Chris, I want to make a hard left back to Joey McGuire's football program. Bowl game now come and gone. We know the portal partying possibilities. You got to love some New Year alliteration. Still ongoing and remaining fluid. So certainly want to make sure you're subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts in case anything continues to pop off there. And I shouldn't say in case because I think things will, but be ready whenever they do come to pass. But I want to focus a little bit more on the sideline and those guys under the headsets to wrap up our conversation today. First, today's episode brought to you by Game Time. Whether it's sports, music, comedy, or beyond, we all love going to live events. And now Game Time has made it even easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature, Game Time Picks. This feature trims all the fat to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. You'll always find can't beat deals. Plus, the app's all-in pricing shows the total cost up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use our code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem our code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. There have been a lot of questions about, all right, what are we looking at as far as kind of a timeline for the completion of the coaching staff, if you will? And I know we've considered, possibilities as far as guys already on your staff shuffling to maybe new spots here or there, but there's certainly, with new coordinators being brought in, the possibility of other support assistants and support staff being brought in. So from your view, what are you seeing here as far as, I guess, maybe a timeline coming up? Is it possible to forecast that kind of thing? And what do you think as far as names from the outside, being mentioned in days or weeks to come as far as joining the staff?
Yeah, there's no hard and fast deadline here on trying to get things done. I don't pretend to know everybody's current situations on what you're trying to, who you may be trying to land and what they've got going on and all those things. But I think there's largely a plan in place, and like when you say staff, I think you're just talking about coaches specific, because when you say staff, there's going to be a lot of moving parts here, because you've got to get into which most fans or listeners of our show may not care about, but there's operations, there's some strength staff, there's going to be more movement in that. I think there's one of your analysts has been offered a coordinator job. And so there's going to be a lot of movement just in general. And those guys play a huge role in the general operation and day to day. So there's going to be a lot of potential movement, but and you got the coaches convention coming up, which a lot of things, happen there, and whatnot. But what you're talking about, in my opinion, I think is basically like what you're going to see on defense.
Yeah.
And that's really what is left to be determined. I think, you could see something here pretty quick, or it could stretch out a bit. But I largely think that that Joey has a pretty good feel for what he wants to do. Now, could something change? Could something get altered or whatever? Sure. But I certainly think that, Coach Wood, the new DC, he was not at the bowl game, but I gather he's going to coach safeties. And I think you may have now. Again, and I hesitate to pin anything of this down because I don't know who's going to be called what or exactly how it's going to be organized. And I think Darcel may coach corners, which is what he's done before at Washington State and Mississippi State. I think he may get promoted if you want to say that. He's been kind of a lead scout for you in the last year. He did an internship for the Dallas Cowboys back in the spring for several months. And he's been on your staff essentially since, I guess, last January, February-ish, something like that. So nearly a year. And obviously former great player. And that leaves a spot. I don't know what that means for Coach Bookbinder. I don't know what that means for anybody else, if there's be any more shuffling, but I gather there may be a coordinator in the American conference that may come in and coach a position for you. So we'll kind of see what that looks like if that's what indeed happens, and what else kind of comes with this deal. But if that would be the case, I'm still trying to figure out how the numbers work, because if that's the case, I think you're at 11 coaches, I think. And so, again, I think you're only allowed 10, and maybe the rule is you can have as many as you want, or only 10 of them can go on the road and recruit. I don't know. Who knows what the rules are anymore.
Or what lawsuit will change that rule tomorrow.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. But I think you kind of have a feel for loosely what you may try to get done. And then you've got, keep in mind, early next week, you're going to have portal visitors in town, most of which are going to be on the defensive side of the ball. Well, I mean, you'd like to think. Now, I don't think necessarily any of these visitors are going to play any of the positions that we're kind of somewhat wondering about aloud. But still, you would think that, you'd want to have your staff maybe largely in place by the time you've got visitors in town and all that. But I don't know. We'll see. There's a lot coming up here and everything like that. So I probably haven't answered your question exactly like I needed to, but here it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, with some of these things pressing as far as visits, there's some indication that obviously you could have some urgency there. But you think about like the convention as well, where things seem to always kind of bubble or swirl around. So just some general ideas on the timeline was what I was looking for. So I think you answered it very well, Chris. Great start to 2025. And I appreciate the time and the insights as always, man. Enjoyed it. And looking forward to the next one. We'll see you then.
Happy 2025, people. Yeah, it's going to take some getting used to say that, man. Goodness gracious. That's a lot of years. Anyway, but everybody enjoy your Thursday. Keep hope alive. And by the way, before we get out, I thought Arizona State showed out, and I was proud of the effort by those guys. And man, just wish they could have gotten it done. But I thought the Big 12 put its best foot forward there. It was fun to watch. But that's all I've got.
Big 12 pride, never in short supply with Chris Level. There's no doubt.
That's just pains me to
what
say.
What am I hearing?
Yeah, I know.
It's a new thing. This is a new feeling. What is this salty discharge? All right, Chris, appreciate you and appreciate everybody for being out there. As always, thanks for kicking off the year with us. You made it a great 2024. So thanks so much for everybody joining us, whether on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. A special shout out to those everydayers, and we still got room on that everydayer wagon as we roll through the year. So hop on board, and of course, still got room for you to hop on board and become a Matador Mobster. Join the group there in the show notes. Hit the link for a free 14-day trial. It's your direct line to Chris and myself with one-on-one text sent straight to your phone. For Chris, I'm Casey. Thanks for the time as always, and we hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.